In today's video, we are talking Tom Crown straight mutes. What's going on, everyone? My name is Josh Rzepka, and today is Mute Monday. If you're new around here, Mute Monday is a weekly series where I discuss and demonstrate trumpet mutes. Today, I am very excited to be sharing with you 3 different straight mutes from Tom Crown. Tom Crown makes some of the most popular mutes out there, and in today's video, I've got 3 of them. The classic straight mute in aluminum, the classic straight mute in aluminum with brass bottom, and the classic straight mute in copper. Now, Tom Crown has a whole lot more mutes than these 3 in the collection. However, these are the ones that I've got, and I wanted to share them with you and give you a little bit of history about Tom Crown and the company, because you should know about them if you're not familiar with their mutes. Now, who is Tom Crown? Well, Tom Crown is a trumpeter, and he is from Chicago. Like so many of these great mute companies that I've talked about and that I have reviewed over all of these weeks, there is a Chicago connection. It just solidifies in my mind that Chicago is the mute capital of the world. So Tom Crown came up in Chicago playing the trumpet. He played in the Chicago Civic Orchestra, and then he played in the Grant Park Orchestra and the Chicago Lyric Opera. And the classic straight mute has got a great story. And if you go to tomcrownmutes.com, you will actually see a lot of information, a lot of history, and you can read even more, but I'm going to give you a brief overview. So the history of Tom Crown mutes and the classic straight mute goes all the way back to 1967. He is playing in the Lyric Opera Orchestra, and he's got a part, D trumpet muted, and this part was a lot easier to play on the piccolo trumpet. However, he didn't have a piccolo trumpet mute, so he contacted Bud Herseth in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and asked him if he could borrow a piccolo trumpet mute. And Bud was very kind, and he lent him this mute, and it worked great. And he was using it on performances, and every time he needed it, you know, he kind of contacted him and said, hey, can I borrow that mute again? Eventually, he felt bad that he was borrowing this mute so often, so he took the mute and he brought it to a local metal worker, someone who could spin metal on a lathe, and he said, can you copy this mute for me? And they copied the mute. However, the dimensions were a little off. The dimensions were too big, and, well, it couldn't be used on the piccolo trumpet. However, he discovered with some taller corks, it actually worked perfectly on the C trumpet, and that is where the classic straight mute was born. So he started giving these mutes to the members of the Chicago Symphony, of the Lyric Opera, and he sold a set to the trumpeters in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And, well, soon enough, he had a mute company on his hands. He then went back to that original metal spinner and he said, hey, can you make me 100 of these? And the guy was like, that's too many. So he found someone new, and someone who was able to make 100. Someone who was able to make 1,000. Then he started experimenting with different metals and different trumpeters. They suggested, hey, what about a copper one? What about brass bottom? What about a copper bottom? There are actually 5 different classic straight mutes. There is the aluminum, there is a copper bottom aluminum, the brass bottom aluminum, an all copper, and then an all brass. These are the only 3 that I've got, so these are the ones that I'm going to be playing today. But it should give you a really good sense on how different it sounds from metal to metal. Generally speaking, when I have the option of a straight mute in all aluminum or aluminum with a brass bottom or copper bottom, I usually gravitate towards the brass bottom anyway. Anytime you get a straight mute and you put it in all copper, it is just something else. Now, of course, Tom Crown has a whole lot more mutes, not just these classic straight mutes. There are other straight mutes, piccolo trumpet, trombone, French horn, a full line of different types of mutes for different instruments. Hopefully sometime in the future, I will be able to get my hand on the entire line of Tom Crown mutes, and I will share them with you. These are the 3 that we're going to be checking out. I mentioned them already. Here is the all aluminum straight mute. Check that out. It's got a real nice design, real nice shape to it, and check that out. You can see how it's put together. That is the label. And the other mutes that I've got, well, they're kind of old and the label's been worn off. This is that brass bottom straight mute. Check that out. You can see the brass bottom, and it's got a nice shape to it. I really like how these mutes fit inside of the bell. And here is the copper version. Check that out. This is pretty dented on the bottom, and it still sounds great. Check that out. It's got a nice weight to it because that copper, of course, copper is so much heavier than aluminum, and I'd be really interested to play the all brass one. I'm sure that would sound terrific. All right, well, I think that's enough talking. Let's hear these mutes. All right, so you've just heard these 3 Tom Crown classic straight mutes. What did you think? Which one was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, I've got to say, I am very impressed by these straight mutes. There is a reason that so many people love and swear by these mutes, and it's because they sound so great and they play so well. Starting off with this all aluminum straight mute, I got to say, this has got such a nice sound to it. So often an all aluminum straight mute, they just sound a little bright without that fullness and core to the sound. And this does not. This has got such a great core to the sound, and it really speaks right at the beginning of the articulation. You've got such a great balance of that muted kind of buzz edge of a straight mute with the core of the sound, and it just progresses from there throughout these 3 different mutes. And the brass bottom, this one right here, same thing. It just is a fuller core with a little bit more immediacy to the sound. And sure, it's got a little bit more edge to it, but it's balanced. Moving on from there to the all copper version, again, this is just, it's kind of just dialing everything up. And if you really want to have just a big, full, meaty sound with a lot of core to it, sure, you're gonna have that straight mute edge, but it's not shrill. It's not like some of the other mutes out there. They have so much edge to them, and these mutes are so well balanced. Really very impressive. If you are looking for a mute for ensemble work, orchestral, wind ensemble, if you're playing in a brass quintet or you're doing solo literature, these mutes, these may be for you. I would say if you're playing more jazz, if you're playing in a pit orchestra, if you're playing a big band, you may want something with a little bit more bite to it. These have got a great core to it, but it's not specifically the sound that I would go for in those situations. Of course, whatever you think sounds best, that's what you should go for. I would really have these in my case if I was playing C trumpet, if I was playing in an orchestra. These would be one of my go-tos because they've got just such a great balance and that nice big core to the sound, and that's what you want. Sometimes if you're playing in a big ensemble, you need that little bit more edge, and that's when I would lean towards this copper one or maybe the brass one. I need to get my hands on one of those so I can see how it sounds. But even the brass bottom, you know, it's got that little bit more edge to the articulation, and all you need is a little bit more edge to that articulation to really be heard out front. Because the articulation, that's what cuts, that's what people hear. And then the sound is just a nice big full sound. So that's what we've got with these 3 mutes. I hope you enjoyed hearing them and learning a little bit about Tom Crown and the Tom Crown Mute Company. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below. Let me know. Hit that like button and make sure you subscribe. It really makes a very big difference. I want to thank you so much for joining me and for checking out my video, and I will see you in the next one.